Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Yevisesha Sunyabadi Pasyate Desatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We start from the prayers. We start from the prayers and not the prayers. The prayers of Narottam Das Thakur. He said, "This sound is above the material platform. It is directly from the spiritual platform, and there's no need of understanding the language. It is just like a thunder burst. Everyone can hear the sound of thunder. There is no misunderstanding. Similarly, these songs are above the material platform, and they crack like thunder within your heart. Why don't you come here every day during my chanting? That would be wonderful." "Yes," said Prabhupada. "From now on, we will record." And every morning after that, Prabhupada sang, and Purushottama, and Yamuna would come to his room and record. "What is your favorite bhajan?" Yamuna asked. "What's yours?" Prabhupada returned. "Lord Chaitanya's Sikshastikam prayers." "My favorite," said Prabhupada, "is Hari Hari Vifale." He recited the gist of the prayer in English. "O Lord Hari, I have spent my life uselessly. Although I have taken this rare human birth, I have not worshipped Radha and Krishna, and so I have unknowingly drunk poison." There is no much depth of meaning in Narottam Das Thakur's prayers. There's so much depth of meaning in Narottam Das Thakur's prayers. Purushottama. Once Prabhupada was sitting alone in his room. I walked by, and I heard him singing a prayer I never heard before. And I went in. Of course, everyone knows he sings. He can sing very beautifully, very greatly inspired. But I never heard him sing as beautifully as he had that one time. I'd heard him sing many, many times in many temples, but I never heard him sing as beautifully as this. I felt very honored to hear it, very privileged. It was beautiful. When he was done, he just got up and said, "Let's go now." Prabhupada also chanted one chapter of Bhagavad Gita daily for 18 days. Anywhere Bhagavad Gita is chanted, he said, that place becomes a tirtha, a holy place. So Prabhupada goes on explaining how the prayers of Narottam Das Thakur, that those prayers are above the material platform, and there's no need to understand his prayers or the language, because it's like a thunder burst. Because when one hears the sound of thunder, there's no misunderstanding. So same way, when one hears the prayers, it's like a crack of thunder within your heart. And Prabhupada then told Yamuna Mataji, and I think Purushottam Prabhu as well, to come every day during his chanting. And Prabhupada said they will start recording. Then Yamuna Mataji asked Prabhupada, what's Prabhupada's favorite bhajan? So Prabhupada replies back first saying, "What's yours?" And Mataji goes saying, "Lord Chaitanya Sikshastikam prayers." And Prabhupada says his favorite bhajan is Hari Hari Vifale. And he goes on replying the gist of the prayer in English, how the Narottam Das Thakur is saying in the verse how we have all spent our life uselessly, and we have taken this rare human birth, but we are not using it to worship Radha and Krishna, and knowingly we drank poison. And it goes on to explain how there's so much depth in the meaning of Narottam Das Thakur's prayers. And then one day, Purushottam Prabhu had heard Prabhupada singing a prayer that he never heard before. And he had heard him sing many times, but this one was so beautiful to him that it struck him greatly. And he felt very honored and very privileged to hear it. And then Prabhupada also would chant one chapter of Bhagavad Gita daily for 18 days. And he would say that wherever Bhagavad Gita is being chanted, that place becomes a holy place at Tirtha.
Hare Krishna. So if you are like, sometimes we can sing this prayers of Narottam Das Thakur. Hari Hari Bifale Janam Gavayanu. They're very beautiful. Purushottam reported to the devotees in the United States these activities of Srila Prabhupada. He is singing prayers a lot, and much of it is being recorded. I must admit that the tapes of songs and prayers he is making now are the best ones I've ever heard. Wait until you hear them when we get back. As the Bhagavatam says, drink deep this nectar, O man of piety, and you shall be taken from this mortal frame. The women cooking for Prabhupada were serving him American desserts, apple pie, donuts, glazed cookies. Prabhupada would smile, but he would only nibble at his dessert. One afternoon he said, "These sweets are very nice, but no one has made me sundaes." None of the devotees knew how to make Bengali sweets, so Prabhupada took them into the kitchen and taught them to make sundaes. although they had watched carefully, their first attempts produced sundaes that was dry and grainy. Prabhupada accepted, preferring the sundaes which Krishna himself used to eat to the Western confections. But the devotees at Titanhurst to have Prabhupada living among them was again to witness Krishna's pure devotee as he engaged constantly in ecstatic devotional service with his body, mind, and words. They could see how Prabhupada was speaking and acting in Krishna consciousness at every moment. And his presence confirmed that the most exalted platform of pure devotional service was a reality. His disciples felt bliss and renewed determination just being with him. Prabhupada's host, John and Yoko, also had the valuable opportunity to be near Prabhupada. Although they chose to keep apart, remaining together in their own world, they mingled but rarely with the devotees. Prabhupada's men continued to work under John's managers, and John was content to let the Swami and his enter his stay. When the head gardener asked John how to greet the devotees, he said, let them please themselves. Let them please themselves. On hearing of certain activities in the main house, Prabhupada commented about the bad influence humans sometimes have on men, but he kept out of John and Yoko's affairs. He had his own affairs in Krishna consciousness. So now Purushottama is updating about this new activity. Similarly, appears to be new activities. Prabhupada is recording a lot of bhajans, and they're recording actually. And he's finding very transcendental. And now also, I don't know how many of you here occasionally, there's a site, there's an app called Kathamrit. You can hear bhajans constantly in your fingertips. Now it's available. I'm very fortunate. But Purushottam Prabhu was really expressing how sweet they are. Drink deep this nectar, O man of piety. You shall be taken from this mortal frame, and that's the reality. Now also one can feel. The devotees, Matajis were cooking American desserts, apple pie, donuts, and all this purposes Sundays. And seems like he gave the recipe. They didn't make so well. Their first attempts was the dry and grainy. Prabhupada accepted, preparing Sundays, which Krishna himself used to eat. So then this is the situation here. They all had an experience, the Prabhupada's living with pure devotee. And they had all this transcendental experience. And every moment he used to live in Krishna consciousness. This presence confirmed that the most exalted platform of pure devotional service was a reality. So they all felt very bliss and renewed determination. Now about host John and Yoko, they will not have any problem because these devotees are working for their house also. They're not that close, And Prabhupada also didn't wanted to, mix up that much. He had his own affairs, and Prabhupada has his own mission to do. Okay, AJ.
Having been whisked from the airport to Tittenhurst, Prabhupada had seen little of London, and one day he asked Shamasundara to take him on a tour of the city. Prabhupada had grown up in British Calcutta, hearing London praised as the seat of Britain's world empire. So when he saw how small many of London's historic landmarks were, he was particularly surprised. At Buckingham Palace, he remarked, "We have many houses in Calcutta bigger than this." The Thames, celebrated in the writings of British authors he had studied in college, was a disappointment also. "It's a canal," he said. "It's only a canal. In my mind, I thought it was bigger than the Ganges." But the most interesting sight was the building at 7 Bury Place. City officials had recently granted the devotees permission to occupy the temple. That part of the battle was won. Now Shamasundara and his few helpers had to finish the remodeling. On seeing the temple's location near the British Museum and Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, Srila Prabhupada became even more anxious than Shamasundara that Shamasundara fix an opening date as soon as possible. In September, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Satsvarupa about his stay at Tittenhurst Park. "Here there is a nice big hall, exactly suitable for a temple. I have begun to give lectures here on specific days, but there are no outsiders coming." Prabhupada wanted to preach to the outsiders, and if they wouldn't come to him, he would go to them. His first outside meeting arranged by the devotees was at Camden Town Hall in the heart of London, and was well attended by Britishers and by Indians. After Prabhupada's brief lecture, only about 15 minutes, a lively question and answer session began. Woman: "Would you say Krishna is God or Krishna is love?" Prabhupada: "Without love, how can Krishna be God?" Woman: "No, I asked you." Prabhupada: "Yes, that is the real position. Krishna means all attractive. Anything which is all attractive, you generally love. Man, and the particle of the Supreme Being, man, is also all love." Prabhupada: "Yes, you are part and parcel of Krishna. You want to love somebody, and Krishna wants to love you. This is a loving exchange. But instead of loving Krishna, you are trying to love something else. That is your trouble. The love is there in you and Krishna, and when the love will be exchanged between you and Krishna, that will be your perfection of life. Man, thank you." Prabhupada, having grown up in British Calcutta, had always heard about, London, and how impressive it was and how important it was, and it was the seat of the empire, of the British Empire. So he had Shamasundara take him on a tour of London, and it sounds like he was pretty underwhelmed by what he saw. He said, "The houses in Calcutta are bigger than Buckingham Palace, and the River Thames is just a canal." He was expecting this massive river, and instead he finds it's much smaller than the Ganges even. But then he also went to the temple, and they had gotten the permits finally to start living in the temple, and Shamasundara and some of the other devotees were working on the remodeling. But now Prabhupada was starting to get anxious. He wanted it to open as soon as possible. So he wrote a letter to Satsvarupa and was telling him about how things were going, and how the hall at John Lennon's estate has this big hall, which is perfect for giving lectures, but it's only to, he can't have outsiders there. It's only the devotees, only the people that are living there. So he held his first outside meeting at Camden Town Hall in London to a decent crowd. But he spoke for about 15 minutes, and then, a question and answer period began. And a woman asked him, is Krishna God or is Krishna love? And Prabhupada said, yeah, Krishna, you can't have one without the other, essentially, so he says, Krishna is all attractive, and if it's all attractive, you're going to love it. And then someone else asks, is being, is the particle of the Supreme Being is, that lives within all of us, is that also love? And, again, Prabhupada says, you want to love somebody, Krishna wants to love you, but instead you're off looking for love elsewhere. And that's the problem everybody has. They're looking in the wrong place for love. And Yeah, once you realize, that loving exchange between Krishna and yourself, that's perfection. So
Yeah, that was good way to catch him, because he wanted to. Man also loves, yeah, but you love someone else. They come. Indian woman.
Indian woman. Would it matter if I worshipped any other? Would it matter whether I worshipped Krishna or Shiva or Krishna or Buddha, Christ or Buddha? Would it matter? Prabhupada, if you worship Shiva, you will get Shiva. If you worship Krishna, you will get Krishna. Why do you expect Krishna by worshipping Shiva? What is your idea? Indian woman. My idea is, would it matter? Prabhupada, don't you suppose if you purchase a ticket for India, you will go to India? How can you go to America? Indian woman, this is not the point. Prabhupada, this is the point. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Yanti Deva Brata, Devan Pitran Yanti Pitra Brata. Indian woman, but my point is, Prabhupada, your point, you understand. Why don't you understand the description of Bhagavad Gita? If you worship demigods like Shiva and others, you will go there. If you worship Krishna, you will go to Krishna. What is the difficulty of understand? Indian woman, do you think that Shiva is a demigod? Prabhupada, yes. Why not? Indian woman, but Krishna says that it does not matter the way you worship, all means have the same goal and you will reach the same goal. You can take the different path, but you will come to me eventually. Prabhupada, try to understand. Suppose you have to go to the 42nd floor of a building and you are going up one after another. So the goal is the 42nd story. But you cannot claim that after going a few steps, I have come to the goal. The 42nd story, the path is one. That's all right. But you have to reach the ultimate goal. You do not know what is the ultimate goal. You simply say all paths reach to this goal, but you do not know what is the ultimate goal. A young hippie stood up and shouted, "Yes, Swamiji."
Hey, Swamiji.
Hey, Swamiji. People in the audience turned around and looked. You said if we are not careful in the next life, we will become a dog. But I want to tell you that I don't mind if I become a dog in my next life.
So this is a conversation between the young human, Indian human, who is, they have a concept of, oh, you can do anything, you can worship anywhere, you can do some kind of this. This is called Mayavada. There is no proper training, and is this inquiring, of course, is inquiring. That is matter, if whom I worship. So Prabhupada says, yeah, it matters in one sense. No, whatever you do, that's what you're going to get. This is, if you go buy ticket to this place, you will go this place. That's not the purpose. That's the point. You have to follow from Bhagavad Gita. Yanti Devata. So, anyway, then I think, do you think that Shiva is a demigod? The purpose, yes. Why not? But Krishna says in that it doesn't matter the way you worship. The way you worship, all means have the same goal. So Prabhupada gave example. Yeah, it is same goal, but if you but if you have to go to particular floor, and you may go to third floor and you say you reached, that doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you have reached your goal. So the path may be the same, but destinations are different. He gave a good example. The third floor, there's 42nd floor, whatever it is. So anyway, now he is dealing with another experience. I think in America, hippies shouting is stopped. Now in UK, still this is beginning now. Is that if you say that if you're not careful in the next life, you will become a dog, then I'm better to be. I don't mind if I become a dog in the next life. So Prabhupada answers. So I can read this.
Hare Krishna. You have my blessing, said Prabhupada, and the young man sat down. One night lectures in scattered places around the city proved further the need of a temple. Prabhupada had experienced a similar situation in New York City in 1965. At that time also he had no temple. His audiences would listen respectfully and then disperse, and he would never see them again. To become Krishna conscious, however, a person needed to hear about Krishna repeatedly, and for that a temple was required. Once Prabhupada had his temple established in London, thousands will be able to come and hear about Krishna, take prasadam, and appreciate the lovely deity form of the Lord. A temple would provide guests with regular, intimate contact with the devotees of the Lord, and this was essential. In the absence of a temple, however, Prabhupada was prepared to go on lecturing all over London. Krishna's teachings, Krishna's kirtan, and Krishna's prasadam were absolute good. They would act regardless of the external situation. Conway Hall was a 500-seat auditorium in Red Lion Square in central London. By arranging a series of 12 lectures over the next 3 months, the devotees hoped to oblige Prabhupada to stay in England at least that long. Gurudas had drawn up a list of lecture titles and printed 50,000 handbills. Admission would be 2 shillings and 6 pence. The first night at Conway Hall, about 100 people attended. Prabhupada sat on a cushion atop a table leading kirtan while his disciples sat on the floor. Yamuna played harmonium and Mukunda and Kulashekara played mridangas. Prabhupada's Radhakrishna deities stood on their altar on a separate table beside Prabhupada. A Hare Krishna mantra banner hung against the back wall. Gurudas had built tonight's lectures, teaching of the Vedas, and Prabhupada explained that Vedic teachings can be understood only by hearing them from self-realized saints. After Prabhupada's lecture, the audience gave a sustained round of applause. Prabhupada answered questions and had Yamuna lead a final kirtan. The next day, Prabhupada wrote a letter to Shyam Sundar Das Brahmachari in India. I spoke for about 1 hour, and after that they continued clapping, which confirms their appreciation. So here, basically, when the young man said that he wanted to become a dog in his, he doesn't mind becoming a dog in his next life, Prabhupada basically blessed him, and the young man sat down. Because the temple was still not ready, the lectures were happening in scattered places. Here, Prabhupada, basically, when people used to attend those one-off lectures, but again they would disperse and they would never come again. But in order to become Krishna consciousness, you should have a temple, and you should be hearing about Krishna repeatedly and take association of devotees and take prasadam, and also take darshan of the deity forms. Because there was no temple, Prabhupada was prepared to lecture at wherever places it is possible in London. And then Gurudas basically arranged a series of 12 lectures in Conway Hall, which was a big auditorium that would seat 500 people, with the hope that if they arranged it over 3 months, and they hope Prabhupada would stay in England for that long. And he also had some pamphlets, and there was an admission price too for those events. And for the first night, only about 100 people attended. Prabhupada sat on a cushion on top of a table. The Radha Krishna deities were on a different table. Devotees sat on the floor, and there was a mantra banner against the back wall. And that day's lecture was teaching of the Vedas, and Prabhupada explained that the Vedas, the Vedic teachings can be understood if you hear from bona fide self-realized saints. And everyone appreciated Prabhupada after the lecture. After answering the questions, Yamuna led the final kirtan, and Prabhupada also wrote a letter to Dr. Shyam Sundar Das Brahmachari in India, where he mentioned about this event and that the audience appreciated because they had clapped.
Yeah, Pranathu, you can read.
Hare Krishna. At the second Conway Hall engagement, when Prabhupada stood during the kirtan and began to dance, the devotees on stage joined him, dancing in a circle. Shana played his trumpet, and even Saraswati, her diapers showing beneath her short dress, jumped up and down in ecstasy. Each week would bring another Conway Hall meeting, and Prabhupada's dancing became a regular feature. One night at Conway Hall, an Englishman student asked, "Why is it you don't try to help the people of your own country? Why did you come so far? Why don't you simply approach the big politicians? There are big politicians to try to help there." Prabhupada, you are a great politician, therefore I'm approaching you. Is that all right? Another man asked, if this is the absolute truth, how come there's so many people in London, but not so many people are in attendance here? Prabhupada, when you're selling diamonds, you don't expect many customers. But if you are giving cut glass, the fools will come. You have a very precious thing, this Krishna consciousness movement. Don't expect that all the foolish people will take to it. Some sincere souls have come. You please also take it. Prabhupada felt encouraged by the response of the English. Regularly, the audiences would join in the chanting and dancing. In London, things are going on nicely, and last evening we had a meeting in Conway Hall, and several hundred persons were joining us in chanting and dancing. After the meeting, one reporter from the biggest London newspaper came behind the stage to get further information about our movement for publication in his paper. So I'm very encouraged to see the nice reception that the people and the news medias are giving to our activities in London. Later in October, we'll stop here, Prabhu.
You can read that line.
Late in October, Prabhupada spoke at the English Speakers Union to a predominantly Indian audience. So at the Conway Hall, there have been some programs, and Prabhupada was, a lot of people were approaching, coming, and Prabhupada was doing kirtan and dancing, and devotees joined him, and Prabhupada is talking about Ishana playing trumpet and Saraswati also dancing up and down in ecstasy. So, so this became a very regular feature there at the Conway Hall, and people started coming, and there were some questions that people were asking, and Prabhupada very tactfully answered these people and encouraged them to come, and that his emphasis was that this is a Krishna consciousness movement is very precious, and he didn't expect a lot of people to come because most people are foolish, and and Prabhupada felt very encouraged by the participation, and he was relatively pleased with the way things were going in London. And the last meeting here, at least up to this point, there were several hundreds of people who joined, and one of the reporters came from backstage to give coverage to the movement for publication in the newspaper. So it was very encouraging. And then Prabhupada spoke to the English Speakers Union, although it was predominantly Indian audience, late in October.
And interestingly, it's almost like 20 years after British leaves, they still have some, so many years they stayed in India. I don't know what impressions they have gotten and went there, but now Prabhupada is here in London.
Well, they very strategically broke the backbone of India, which was our spiritual culture.
Right.
They
But it's an interesting thing. After they cannot, it's interesting thing to see Prabhupada here in London. he is going to wash their brains now. And the point is, oh, why everybody is not taking? Well, you are there, you take it. So why you can, why don't so many politicians are there? You know, they say you are also a politician, take it. So basically, if you don't take, then why they will take? And
Most of the witty answers Prabhupada used to give, one-liners.
I mean, those things answers can be given only, you know.
Yes, yes, of course. Yeah.
And it's a very good though. The world sometimes doesn't have don't have that kind of intelligence to respond, think, and all this thing. Prasanthi.
He began his talk. Although we are a small gathering today, this is a very important meeting. India has got a message. You are all respectable Indians present here in an important city of the world, London, and of the world, London. And I have come here with an important mission. It is not the same mission as Indians generally have who come here and to other foreign countries to beg something. I have come here to give something. So you please try to cooperate with me. On October 30, Prabhupada lectured at Oxford Town Hall. His talk was basic, although embellished with more Sanskrit quotes than usual. His disciples had not expected much of a response from Oxford students. Yet the hall was filled, and when Prabhupada stood and gestured for everyone to raise their hands and dance, practically the entire audience responded. While Mukunda played the huge pipe organ and hundreds joining the chanting, Prabhupada held his arms high and began powerfully jumping up and down. As yesterday, we had a very successful meeting at Oxford at the town hall. About 350 boys, girls, old men, ladies, and gentlemen participated, and we made them all dance and chant with us. Everyone. After the meeting, many boys and gentlemen came to congratulate me. Prabhupada received an invitation to appear on Britain's most popular TV talk show, Late Night Lineup. The interviewer, accustomed to snappy repartee, tried to engage Prabhupada in his style of conversing, avoiding long philosophical answers. Swamiji, he asked, do you have a concept of hell in your religion? Yes, Prabhupada replied. London is hell. The host appeared stunned, as if beaten at his own game from the start. Prabhupada continued, it is always damp, cloudy, and raining. In India, the sun is always shining. The interviewer was still at a loss for words. And Prabhupada, perhaps sensing the man's embarrassment, added, of course, it is a very great credit to English people to have established such a great civilization in such a climate. There were other questions, and Prabhupada talked for an hour, explaining the Krishna consciousness movement and philosophy. The next day, a London newspaper announced, Swami calls London hell. The Hare Krishna mantra record was still high on the charts in England and throughout the continent, and this fame led a Dutch television company to invite Prabhupada's disciples to Amsterdam, all expenses paid to do a show. They would have only 5 minutes of airtime, but Prabhupada accepted it. 5 minutes, he said, is sufficient. We will preach the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness in 5 minutes. Prabhupada lectured in the Oxford Town Hall, like 350 boys, girls, and um, old men and women. They all assembled there, and rather than his usual talk, he added more of Sanskrit. His disciples did not expect that much response from the Oxford students. And when Prabhupada asked everyone to raise their hands and dance, practically the whole hall responded. And they were playing some musical instruments, and everybody chanted and danced. And Prabhupada began powerfully jumping up and down. And later, a Britain popular TV talk show, Late Light Lineup, has invited Prabhupada. And during the discussion, the first question he started was, do you have the concept of hell in your religion? Then Prabhupada responded as London is hell. And then the host is...
Won't answer, huh? Who can dare in the world coming on visa and staying on TV and showing this direct London is hell, and whole people of London will woke up by hearing this. Yeah.
So the host is stunned, and he's lost. He has no words. And then seeing the embarrassment of that host, Prabhupada continued saying that even in this climate of cloudy, rainy, and always damp, in such atmosphere also, they were able to bring up a great civilization. This is a great credit to the English people. And after that talk, London newspaper announced as Swami calls London as London Hell. And then and the Dutch television company has invited Prabhupada and his disciples to Amsterdam, but they were only given 5 minutes. Prabhupada accepted it, saying, we will preach the whole Krishna conscious philosophy in 5 minutes.
That's interesting to know. Huh? They could spend so much money for 5 minutes show. And probably you don't need more. 5 minutes enough. I'm glad they're spending and we are speaking. That's very good. Okay, who is there? Srikar?
Prabhupada and his party took the ferry from Dover across the English Channel to France and then traveled by train to Amsterdam. The television studio, located outside the city, was in a modern, air-conditioned building with constant loudspeaker announcements, artificial plants, a TV in every room, but no windows. The receptionist brought Prabhupada and his disciples to a windowless room with painted concrete walls. In India, Prabhupada said, we would not consider living in a place without windows and fresh air. I want to sit by a window. So the devotees checked through the entire building until finally in the third floor hallway they found a window. Moving their chairs with them, they went with Prabhupada and sat by the window. By the year 2000, no one will see the light of day, Prabhupada said. Cities will be forced to live underground. They will have artificial light and food but no sunlight. The producer of the program arrived, surprised to find that Swami was also going to be part of the act. The surprise was a pleasant one, and he welcomed Prabhupada to his show. Now, what I want you and your group to do, he explained, is to sing your record, Hare Krishna mantra. You don't have to actually sing out loud. We are going to play your record and you mime. Pretend you are playing those instruments. Pretend you are singing. He allowed that afterward Prabhupada could speak for 2 minutes. Just before Prabhupada and the devotees went on stage, they had to wait in the wings while a local Dutch group danced around, pretending to play their saxophones, trumpets, and drums. Then the producer brought in a table with a cushion on it for Prabhupada and seated the devotees around Prabhupada on the floor. So here we see, so the Dutch television company invited Prabhupada and his disciples to Amsterdam. So Srila Prabhupada along with his disciples, they took a ferry from Dover and then to France, and then they traveled to Amsterdam by train. So the television studio was located outside the city. It was a modern facility with air-conditioned building. And then there was constant loudspeaker announcements going on inside the studio. There were some artificial plants and there was a television in every room. But there were no windows at all. So the receptionist, they welcomed Prabhupada and his disciples. And then she put them in a windowless room with a painted concrete walls. And then as soon as Prabhupada saw that, he said in India, they would not consider living in a place without windows and fresh air at all. And then he expressed his desire to sit by a window. So the devotees checked the entire building and then finally they found On the third floor hallway is a window. So they all moved to the window, and Prabhupada sat, and devotees sat around Srila Prabhupada. And then Srila Prabhupada told his disciples that by the year 2000, people will not see the light of the day, and then in many cities, people will be forced to live underground, and that they'll have only artificial light and food, but no sunlight at all. And then shortly after, the producer of the program arrived, and then he was a little surprised when he saw Srila Prabhupada to be also a part of the act. But again, then he informed the Prabhupada and the devotees that how everything is going to happen. He said they would play the record, the Hare Krishna mantra, and then he informed him that they don't actually have to sing at all; they just have to mime and then pretend as if they are singing. And then he allowed Srila Prabhupada to speak after the recording ends for 2 minutes. And then just before Srila Prabhupada and his devotees they went on stage. They had to wait until a local Dutch group finishes their play. Once that was done, then the producer brought a chair with a cushion for Srila Prabhupada, and then all the devotees sat around Prabhupada on the stage.
The cameras began, the record played, and the devotees started to mime. Suddenly, clouds produced by dry ice rolled in on the set, a mystical effect. As the devotees disappeared under clouds of carbon dioxide, only Prabhupada remained clearly visible. Seeing the special effect unsuccessful, the producer motioned the devotees to stand and dance beside the Swami. The song ended, and a camera closed in on Prabhupada. Now you have 2 minutes, Swamiji. The producer said. Prabhupada began. We have been chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. This is a transcendental sound vibration, non-different from the Lord. The Lord's name and his form are the same. Please chant this sublime sound and your life will become perfect. You'll become happy and you'll realize your true nature, that you are an eternal servant of God, Krishna. This process is called Bhakti Yoga, and we request everyone to take to this chanting. Thank you very much. Prabhupada was pleased as his disciples' record continued to be a hit in Europe. The Hare Krishna record is selling very nicely. Yesterday it sold 5,000 copies, and this week it is on the chronological list as 20. They say next week it will become to 3, and after that it may come to 1. So they are very much hopeful of this record. So the play had begun, and there were artificial clouds on the dais, except Prabhupada. Everyone, like only Prabhupada could be seen very clearly. And this special effect was unsuccessful, and the producer told, he was motioning the devotees to stand and dance beside Prabhupada. So the play ended, and the camera was closed on Prabhupada. So the producer said that now Prabhupada had 2 minutes to tell. So he began by telling that by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, it is not different from the Lord, and the Lord's name and even his form are the same. It's not different from each other. So he requested them to chant this mantra so that they'll become perfect, and they'll also become happy, and they'll realize the true nature that they are the eternal servant of the Lord Krishna. So this process is called Bhakti Yoga, and then he thanked everyone. So Prabhupada was pleased that this play was a big hit in Europe, and his Hare Krishna record was also his Hare Krishna record was also selling very nicely, Like in the first week, it was sold 5,000 copies, and chronologically, it was coming in the list as 20, and the next week to 3, and then they thought that it may also come to number 1. So they were very much hopeful of this record.
Thank you. Vijayan Prabhu?
To Satsvarupa in Boston, Prabhupada wrote, "The Hare Krishna record is going on in England nicely, and I heard that in Australia it stands fourth on the list of 50 important records. Hare Krishna mantra became the #1 song in West Germany, #1 in Czechoslovakia, and among the top 10 all over the Europe and even in Japan. With the income from the record, the devotees began paying their bills and financing the renovations of the Very Place temple. Sometimes the devotees would perform at concerts with professional groups, and sometimes they would receive invitations to appear in nightclubs. After one particularly late and nasty nightclub engagement, Yamuna went to Prabhupada and told him what the place had been like. Prabhupada called for all the devotees. These places, he explained, are not good for brahmacharis. The principle is that we have to make devotees, so we have to think where we are going. If we are going somewhere to preach, but we can't make any devotees there, what is the use? So we have to think like that. He said he was not forbidding them to preach in nightclubs, but he told them to be careful. One of the devotees asked if showing slides of Krishna mixed in with the psychedelic slides were permissible. Prabhupada said no. Krishna should be on the throne or on altar. If they watered Krishna consciousness down, it could become idol worship. Not since Prabhupada had first left India in 1965 had he preached to Indians and extensively as now. Indians would always attend his lectures, and even if they did not dance and chant, they appreciated Krishna consciousness. Even before Prabhupada's arrival in London, a few Indians had stepped forward to help the devotees, and now the majority of Prabhupada's occasional guests are at Titanhurst were Indians. Bringing their families, they would sit and chat with Prabhupada, often inviting him to their homes for dinner. Kedarnath Gupta. Prabhupada agreed to come to our house. We received him with a warm welcome, and many other people also came to hear him. He was very much pleased to see that we had our family deities of Radha and Krishna given by my mother. And he commented, "I am very much pleased to come to this place and see that Radha and Krishna are here." He gave a very nice lecture and told that the purpose of the human form of life is self-realization. He said one should be inquisitive to know who he is. All those assembled who had come to hear him were very much pleased and impressed by his lecture. After his lecture, I did the arati and we offered the foodstuffs to the deity. And then we distributed prasadam to everyone. Prabhupada took the prasadam and he was very much pleased to take prasadam in our house. As he was leaving, I requested him, "When can I see you next?" He said, "You can see me anytime you want." So after seeing the response for the Hare Krishna record, Prabhupada was writing letter to Satsvarupa mentioning that the Hare Krishna mantra record was going on in England nicely, and also in Australia it's like on the fourth of the list of 50 important records. Also in other countries like Germany, Czechoslovakia, also in Europe and Japan. So everywhere it was like moving well. So with the income they get, the devotees use them for paying their bills and doing the renovations of the Bari Place temple. And the devotees will be doing like concerts with professional groups in several places, even in nightclubs. And there was one incident where the nightclub where they did the preaching, the place was not that much good. And after knowing that from Yamuna Mataji, Prabhupada called for all the devotees, and he gave an instruction stating that the places which are not good for brahmacharis, we should not go. And the only purpose to do the preaching in nightclubs is to get any devotee. So in case if we know that that place, if we cannot make anyone as a devotee, then we should stop going there. And he also mentioned that he is not against going nightclub, but they should be careful in selecting the place to think if they can make any devotee from that place. And also there was another suggestion where another devotee suggested if they can mix Krishna with psychedelic slides, but Prabhupada mentioned that they should not do it. And if they left the Krishna consciousness down, it will become an idol worship. And also with the other Indians over there, even though like Prabhupada left in 1965 to preach in various countries, he used to get a lot of support from the Indians over there. Even though they did not dance and chant, they appreciated Krishna consciousness. And even in London, before he came, some of them were helping the devotees, and they were also invited him to their homes for dinner. And there is one devotee, Kedarnath Gupta. So he's sharing his experience, and he was saying like Prabhupada went to his house, and they received them with warm welcome. And also Prabhupada was pleased to see the deities at his home, the Radha and Krishna given by his mother. And also Prabhupada was giving a very good lecture on the human form, on the purpose of the human form of life is for self-realization. And the people who are assembled there were very much pleased and impressed by the lecture. And after the arti, they offered foodstuffs to the deity, and prasadam was distributed to everyone. And Prabhupada, after eating the prasadam, he was very much pleased. And when he was about to leave, the person who was prepared that meeting, he was requesting like when he can see next, and Prabhupada mentioned that he's available anytime, and he can call him at any time.
Sometimes there will be disagreements over philosophy, but Prabhupada's arguments were always convincing. The Indians were respectful to Prabhupada and repeatedly invited him to their homes. One of Britain's most prominent and respectful Indians visited, Prabhupada Patel, as did many businesses with the means to help Prabhupada's mission, but few were willing to sacrifice. Yeah, willing to sacrifice, right? It's nothing new. The second moon landing by American astronauts was scheduled for mid-November, only a few weeks away. For months, the moon shots had received much press coverage, and Prabhupada would speak of them often. Almost a year ago in Los Angeles, he had answered a reporter's queries on the possibility of man's landing on the moon. Just like we are going from one place to another by motor car or by airplane, this mechanical process will not help us to go to the moon planet. The process is different as described in the Vedic literature. One has to qualify. According to our literature, our information, it is not possible. In this body, we cannot go there. At Titanhurst, Prabhupada often brought up the moon landing while talking with his disciples. The moon landing was a hoax, he said one evening in his room. For they cannot go to the moon. The moon planet Chandraloka is residence of the demigods, higher beings than these drunkards and cow-eating slaughterers who are trying to inhabit it. Now India is also trying to go actually. You cannot think this travel is allowed. Like when I migrated from India to US, the moon planet cannot be visited so quickly. It is not possible. Srila Prabhupada's disciples accepted his statements. He was giving not simply his opinion, but the verdict of the Vedic scriptures, because he accepted Vedic authority over modern science. So did his disciples, but not Purushottama. Detecting Purushottama's dubious mentality, Prabhupada would often joke lightly in Purushottama's presence. Someone would ask a question, where is Janaki? And Prabhupada would reply, oh, Janaki has gone to the moon. Then everyone except Purushottama would laugh. The devotees knew of Purushottama's difficulty. He was an American and proud that Americans were conquered space. And they knew that Prabhupada was joking about it. Purushottama was upon the latest scientific advancement. He was impressed by NASA's achievement, astronaut Neil Armstrong's giant step for mankind. So now, here Prabhupada saying that there are some Indians who would invite a lot. They might give some money, but they're not willing to sacrifice for the mission. Now, the second moon landing program is scheduled in America for mid-November. Prabhupada would speak because that's the right opportunity to speak about it. I think there'll be easy journey to other planet will come. Book may come or may already came. We didn't read it, but that's the book would come actually. So he said this is not the method you can just mechanical process. You can go anywhere. It's the abode of demigods, the highly qualified personalities, and you cannot just go. Anyone, drunkards and everybody cannot just go. So moon planet, and also according to the Vedic calculation, moon planet cannot be visited so quickly. Till now, even I don't understand why they always land in dark portion of the moon. I have no idea. So they say in India recently went send some of them. They didn't go. They sent some of our robo machines. So this is landed on dark side of the moon. So Prabhupada's disciple Purushottam was very much happy because his scientific background that America is having this, but Prabhupada knew how to he was making fun of this thing, that how somebody can go. So that's the background of Purushottam, that he likes it. He was impressed by NASA's achievement and astronauts Neil Armstrong's giant step for mankind. So basically Purushottam accepts, he's fully convinced that they have landed, and then Prabhupada's point is they didn't land. Only they know.
Although Purushottam went on with his duties, he became sullen, and Prabhupada noted his lack of enthusiasm. One morning, Prabhupada and Yamuna were together with Prabhupada in his room. Purushottam had several days' growth of beard, was wearing the same orange sweater he had slept in, whereas Yamuna was neat and clean. Although she had only 2 simple cotton saris, she would always put on a freshly washed and ironed one before going to see Prabhupada. Looking at his 2 servants, Prabhupada said, Yamuna, you have so many saris. They're all so beautiful. Yamuna looked up at Prabhupada in surprise. I don't have so many, Srila Prabhupada. No, you're wearing a new piece of cloth every day. It's so nice. You're always looking so neat and clean. And your tilak. Purushottama, what do you think? Who do you think has the best tilak? Purushottama didn't answer. Beautiful tilak, Prabhupada said, means beautiful person. About 6 o'clock that same evening, Yamuna was cooking puris and potatoes for Prabhupada when she heard him ring the servant's bell. Leaving the key on the fire, she ran up to Prabhupada's quarters. He talked with her about the lecture he would give that evening and eventually asked, when will prasadam be ready? Before the discourse? Yes, Srila Prabhupada. Yamuna smelled smoke. Oh, she gasped. Please excuse me, Prabhupada. I've left some ghee on the fire. Rushing downstairs, she found the kitchen filled with black smoke. She couldn't see the stove. Purushottama, she cried. Purushottama arrived, and together they groped through the smoke. Somehow Purushottama extinguished the fire before it caused serious damage. Purushottama and Yamuna were covered with soot. Their faces were black, and Purushottama's orange sweater, his robes, and Yamuna's saris were all blackened. Suddenly, Prabhupada rang the servant's bell, and they both hurried upstairs to tell him about the fire. When Janaki returned downstairs and saw the mess, she ran upstairs to Prabhupada's room, where Yamuna and Purushottama stood, still covered with soot before Prabhupada. What has happened here? Janaki burst out. Prabhupada looked at her soberly and said, today Purushottama has gone to the moon. What? Janaki asked. Prabhupada repeated, yes, our Purushottama has gone to the moon. Prabhupada, Purushottama said, I am a brahmachari. Why are you saying these things? Being a brahmachari is no restriction from going to the moon. Anyone can go, Prabhupada said. All the devotees, So over time, Purushottama was going with his duties, but Prabhupada noted a lack of enthusiasm in him. One day came where Purushottama would be growing several days of a beard, and he would be wearing the same orange sweater he had slept in. Whereas for Yamuna, she was very neat and clean, and even though she had only 2 cotton saris, she would always put on a fresh washly clothed one and iron one every day before going to see Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said that, Yamuna, you have so many saris, they're so beautiful. And when she said she doesn't have so many, he replied, said that, no, you do, because you're wearing a new piece of cloth every day. And it looks so clean, and you have and you have tilak. And Prabhupada goes on to explain, said, a beautiful tilak means a beautiful person. And then later, about 6 o'clock in the evening, Yamuna was cooking puris and potatoes for Prabhupada. And when she heard the servant's bell ring, she went to go to Prabhupada's quarters, leaving the ghee on fire. And Prabhupada was telling her about the lecture he would be giving this evening when he asked when will prasadam be ready. And then she realized when she smelled smoke that she had left the ghee on the stove. And when she ran downstairs, she saw there was black smoke everywhere. And then she called out for Purushottama, and together both of them tried to extinguish the fire before it caused serious damage. And then when Purushottam Vara and Yamuna Mataji went back to Prabhupada there, Janaki also arrived there. Yeah, they were covered with soup, and their clothes were all blackened. And then Janaki arrived and asked what happened there. I understand this. He said that Purushottam was constant.
Yeah, he was just kidding.
So Janaki asked what happened, and Prabhupada said that, jokingly Prabhupada said Purushottam has gone to the moon. And then Purushottama got angry, kind of irritated, saying that, Prabhupada, why are you saying these things? I'm a brahmachari. But Prabhupada says that being a brahmachari is no restriction from going to the moon. Anyone can go.
Yeah, is it?
The devotees regularly encountered John and Yoko. Although originally interested in a business relationship, John was inclined towards the devotees, but his friends advised him not to get involved with the Swami and his group, so he remained aloof. Asana Das. I was in the kitchen working, and John was sitting at the piano. He had a piano in the kitchen, a great upright piano with all the varnish removed, bare wood. And in this way, he was sitting at the piano playing Hare Krishna. The man was actually a great musician, and he played Hare Krishna in every musical idiom you could think of, bluegrass music or classical music or rock and roll or whatever. He would go at will from one idiom to another, always singing Hare Krishna. It was so natural for him, and one could see that he was a musical genius. And in this way, he was entertaining me, and he was obviously really enjoying it. So anyway, while his piano playing was going on with great vigor and enthusiasm, this chanting Hare Krishna, his wife Yoko Ono appeared in a nightgown, or what have you, and said, in a very distressed tone, "Please, John, I have a terrible headache. Can't you stop that sort of thing and come upstairs with me?" George was different. He was drawn to Prabhupada. When one of the devotees had asked, "Why out of all the Beatles are you only interested?" George had replied, "It's my karma. One of the things in my sign is the spiritual side." George Harrison. Prabhupada looked just like I thought he would. I had like a mixed feeling of fear and awe about meeting him. That's what I liked about later on after meeting him more. I felt that he was just more like a friend. I felt relaxed. It was much better than at first. Because I hadn't been able to tell what he was saying, and I wasn't sure if I was too worldly to even be there. But later I relaxed and felt much more at ease with him, and he was very warm towards me. He wouldn't talk differently to me than to anybody else. He was always just speaking about Krishna, and it was coincidental who happened to be there. Whenever you saw him, he would always be the same. It wasn't like one time he would tell you to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and then the next day he said, "Oh no, I made a mistake." He was always the same. For whatever reason, friends of John and Yoko told John to kind of stay clear of Prabhupada and the devotees. But it sounds like he was still drawn to it anyway. One of the devotees discusses how John Lennon would sit at the piano in the kitchen and just sing Hare Krishna all day. And, he'd play it in all sorts of different styles. And, but then Yoko, as usual, would show up and ruin it. And say, "Come on, get out of here. Let's go upstairs. I have a headache." Then George on the other hand was drawn towards Prabhupada, and he says, and when asked why, he said it's his karma, right? He said one of the things, I guess he had his chart done at some point, and somebody said is, part of him is this spiritual side of him, and he talks about how Prabhupada felt like a friend to him. At first, he was a little afraid to meet him. I guess it's one of those like don't ever meet your heroes type thing, because you're afraid you'll be disappointed. But he was also afraid that he didn't really understand what he was saying, and he was a little thought maybe he was too worldly, to be around him. But he said Prabhupada was always warm towards him, and he wouldn't treat him any differently than anybody else. He was always the same, and he all the time. I mean, just when you read this, it's absolutely crazy, right? When you think about it, like these devotees are living at John Lennon's house, and they're sitting they're talking about sitting in the kitchen cooking while John Lennon is just sitting at a piano just playing. Like, I mean, that's good. It's insane. It's insane to even try to wrap your head around like how this happened. Like if somebody told it to you, you're like, nah, couldn't be. Like, can't be real. But nope, there it is, right? It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and that all these arrangements, I think they're the most famous people, right?
Yeah.
Those times.
People would kill for that. They'd kill for that.
Sorry?
People would kill to have that opportunity to sit while John Lennon just wails away on a piano singing whatever comes to mind. Yeah. But right, what Prabhupada say earlier? It's Krishna's plan, right? So it's all Krishna's blessing.
I can too.
Seeing him was always a pleasure. Sometimes I would drop by thinking I wasn't planning to go, but I better go because I ought to, and I would always come away just feeling so good. I was conscious that he was taking a personal interest in me. It was always a pleasure. George was attracted to Krishna and he liked to chant. Even before meeting Prabhupada, he had learned something of Krishna from Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, from the autobiography of Paramhamsa Yogananda, and from traveling in India. But Prabhupada's instructions in particular impressed upon him that Lord Krishna was the absolute truth, the origin of everything. George, Prabhupada helped me to realize the multifaceted way to approach Krishna, like the prasadam, for example. I think it is a very important thing. Prasadam, even if it is only a trick. Like they say, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Well, even if it is a way to a man's spirit soul, it works. Because there is nothing better than having been dancing and singing or just sitting and talking, and then suddenly they give you some food. It is like it's a blessing. And then when you learn to touch him or taste him, it's important. Krishna is not limited. And just by Prabhupada's being there and pouring out all this information, I was moved. It is like the mind is stubborn, but it is all Krishna. That's all you need to know. It is all Krishna. This world is his material energy too, the universal form. And in Prabhupada's books, there are these pictures showing Krishna in the heart of a dog and a cow and a human being. It helps you to realize that Krishna is within everybody. Although Prabhupada might have been teaching some higher aspect, what came through to me was a lot was a greater understanding of how Krishna is everywhere and in everything. Prabhupada explained about the different aspects of Krishna, and he provided a meditation where you could see Krishna as a person everywhere. I mean, there is anything that isn't Krishna. So here, George continues, like basically he's telling his experiences where whenever he has a chance to meet Prabhupada, he would always go meet Prabhupada because he would always have a good feeling. And he also saw that Prabhupada was taking a personal interest in him. And George, he was actually attracted to Krishna, and he liked to chant even before meeting the devotees or Prabhupada. He had learned about Krishna from a yogi when he visited India. But he was particularly impressed with Prabhupada's instructions that Lord Krishna is the absolute truth and the origin of everything. And he also mentions about the different ways to approach Krishna, like for example, the prasadam. And here he says that after a lot of singing and hearing and dancing, and then they give you food, like it says, like this, like a blessing, and what more is required. And he also says that the information that Prabhupada gives about Krishna is like it's basically he also says that all this material world is also his external potency, its manifestation. And in Prabhupada books, he gives an example that it shows Krishna in the heart of a dog, a cow, a human being, and he also mentions that Prabhupada explains the different aspects of Krishna, and he says how you can chant and you can see Krishna anywhere, and he's sharing his realization that there is nothing which is not Krishna.
Very good. Thank you so much. We have a couple of minutes. Anyone can have quick reflections to share? The show on the TV was funny, isn't it? London, have you seen Either Hell? So, yeah, there is London is hell. That's one of the nice.
They were having lectures in Conway Hall, where a lot of other people, which was in London, and many people were joining. And that was before the temple. They got a permission, but they still haven't done the temple, I think, right? They haven't still went into the temple.
The records were going well. They went to Amsterdam, right? And what else?
They also gave a lecture at the Oxford Hall.
Yes. So many people joined, right? Almost 350 or something like that. 350 students, they accepted, received very well. Anything else?
The Indian families who settled in London, they were inviting Prabhupada to their homes, and they were all appreciative, but they were not making any big sacrifices to spread the movement.
Yeah.
Prabhupada also talks about the moon landing, and it's not possible to go in this body, and also how Purushottam reacted for that.
One thing, did you, Mother Yamuna, there she had only 2 pair of saris. And this shows how disciplined, how neat devotees, there are a lot of things to learn. And still they maintain very nice, very high standard clean, take twice a day shower. Very, very nicely they maintain. So 2 pair of saris, but still she was preparing, maintaining very high standard cleanliness. That's very nice thing. Okay. George also here. We are ending with George's talk. He seems like and slowly getting attracted to Krishna. That's one thing. Anything else? Anyone remember? No? Okay. So I think it's good. Hope everyone doing well. We'll reconvene tomorrow again. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Prabhupada Lilamrt ki jai. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.